Slow down, lay your burden down.
Hey, welcome to Divergent Paths with Dan Dunford. I am Dan Dunford, the host of this podcast, and, well, let's just get right into it. I'm not going to bother with any personal ramblings and such. This week is a really special interview. Well, half of one, because it'll be split up over the next 2 weeks. I transferred as a junior to Manus College of Music, School of Music, whatever they're calling it now, in 2010, and that afforded me the opportunity to spend about 5 years studying with bass trombonist David Taylor, who is my guest this week and next week. And I don't know, if you're listening to this and don't know who David Taylor is, you really should. It's really hard to try and describe what it is that he does or what his career has been. He's probably the most successful bass trombonist ever overall, spanning over, close to 50 years of a career. He's played for everyone from Bernstein, Boulez, Stokowski, to Duke Ellington and Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan. He was incredibly active in the studio scene in the 70s and 80s, and has had an exceptional solo career as well. He's commissioned probably more works for trombone than anyone else. And the biggest influence, one of the biggest influences on my life over the past 10 years, from listening to his recordings when I was in high school, to getting to study with him, and as well as being able to perform alongside him on a couple of occasions. So suffice to say, this was a really really special one for me, and probably anyway, it was really an honor for me to sit down and talk to him for 2+ hours about everything from family to career to education to everything, you name it. We talked about it for at least a little bit over the period of 2 hours. So the first half will be this week, and then next week will be the second half, because that's how this works. So I'll be featuring 2 pieces that feature Dave Taylor on this episode. One before the interview, one after the interview. The first one is from Pugh Taylor Project 2, which was released a few years ago. He recorded this with the exceptional jazz trombonist Jim Pugh. And the piece at the top is called Blue Organum, Sextet Movement 1. It's a tune by David Matthews. And at the end of the interview will be a small segment of David's piece, Too Sweet, that he performed with the Low Brass Connection from the album The Sounds After the Oil War. So yeah, stick around for that. And if you like this segment of the interview, come back next week for the second half, which is also awesome. And also, if you dig the podcast, subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, or share it around. Give me write up a review, something. Let me know what you think. Send me an email at divergentpathspod@gmail.com. So yeah, enjoy.
You're a unique case in that you've been doing this for longer than most people do.
Right. You mean actual playing?
Actual play.
Yeah, it's getting to that point now.
Yeah, because a lot of guys,
45, 50 years. Man.
A lot of guys will play for 30 years and then teach for the next 20. They'll retire from whatever ensemble or whatever they did and then teach for the rest. Until.
Yeah, I love it, man.
You've been you've added teaching in, but you've been going at it for.
The teaching doesn't get in the way of my career.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's a unique case.
Yeah.
So like just.
I didn't realize that was a unique case. I figured that was a kind of.
Well, I think the difference is that sometimes, I run into guys on gigs sometimes that are like where somebody will be like, oh yeah, this guy so and so played with this big name or that big name, and you hear him playing, you're like, well, I guess that was a long time ago, kind of a thing.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I'm sure they were really, really great 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago.
I don't want to be like that.
Exactly, and I think that's the difference, and it even happens with guys who are in orchestral jobs still after a long period of time. You can, their playing starts to dip, and that's maybe some people hang on for a year or two too long. And I mean, that happens with athletes, it happens with musicians, but in your case, it's
people. Well, I'm covering it up by going into my own writing now, so I play in my own style. You know what I'm saying? Writing for me, so that's a kind of. Although I'm not looking at it that way, but that's what it's doing.
I mean, you can you can say that, but I don't.
I practice a lot. Man.
Yeah, and so like here you are, having gone through, seen New York go through all these different changes. Over your career, and you've been able to adapt as things change. In order to keep working and keep playing.
I don't look at it like that either, though.
And
I just lucked out. My interests happened to change coincidentally with certain things.
I mean, maybe that's the case, but to an outsider, it looks a little bit like you knew something the rest of us didn't.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think of it like that, but I understand where your thinking is. Yeah, it could look that way. Yeah.
So I mean, let's just kind of like go start back from the beginning.
Go ahead.
Get this out of the way.
Which is what you didn't want to do last time.
Which is not. Well, I'm sure,
right.
But
Okay.
if we stick to that kind of structure, we can can go down rabbit trails and then come back.
All right. Okay.
He's New York, born and bred. Brooklyn. Where in Brooklyn?
Flatbush. I started out East New York. I think I was born in East New York, Brownsville, and then I moved to East Flatbush.
And,
which I love dearly. The whole concept of even coming from that area, I love dearly.
And Brooklyn at that time is a lot different than.
Much different. It was all like Jews, Irish, and Italians. Right? That was Brooklyn.
But like I mean, I guess it's fair to say very blue collar upbringing.
Yeah, it was a kind of blue collar upbringing.
I mean,
Dad worked 3 jobs, that kind of thing. Mom was a housewife. I don't think either of them graduated from high school.
Mm.
In fact, my older brother didn't graduate from high school either. I was the first one.
And you started playing trumpet in high school for a very brief
junior high for a month, and then the guy, Mr. Sazlo, transferred me to tuba because he needed a tuba, and he saw I had a kind of a naturalistic approach to it. So I had to learn how to play the tuba real quick because I was in the senior orchestras and stuff like that. So it was very good. Yeah.
So, but it was something that, like you said,
I love the tuba.
It forced you to jump into that a lot quicker.
Right
like you didn't have the 2-3 years to.
No, jumped right in. Right.
And obviously, I mean, you still have you played tuba later in your life than.
Yeah. Well, that's why I started the Broadway show scene on tuba. Because they needed tuba, bass trombone doublers, and there weren't that many guys doing it back in the 60s. So that kind of got me right into the business real quick. Luckily, I could play the tuba.
They've since fixed that by never writing for tuba anymore.
Yeah, right. No, everybody's doubling now.
Yeah.
West Coast, they always did that. East Coast was a little less adept at that, or a little less demanding.
Why do you think that is?
No clue. Well, maybe the movie work, stuff like that, just...
So I mean, that's pretty cut and dry, So you didn't start trombone until
I was a senior in high school. My brother played the trombone, and we borrowed one from a cousin of mine who actually worked with the Commodores and Louis Prima even back in the day. His father, my great uncle Al, was a tuba player. He learned in reform school, and I love that guy. And my other cousin Jerry, those both guys, they're deceased, but their the guy who lent me the horn, his brother's still alive. He was a trumpet player, so that was And Mom couldn't get me home with the tuba, so I would pick up my brother's trombone, and that's how that worked. Yeah, I didn't care for the trombone.
Just no interest?
It wasn't the tuba, man. But I've subsequently loved, as soon as I played the bass trombone, I loved that right away. Yeah.
It's a more portable version.
Well, it's got more aggression to it, almost, and it has more fit-inness about it. I mean, I was able to play in the big bands and the orchestras, and big bands weren't using tubas too much back in the day, I mean, back in the 60s. Earlier on, that was one of the mainstays, that was the bass.
Those early Miles Davis records, or those 50s era Miles Davis records, he wrote for tuba.
Yeah.
But it didn't really, he was kind of the only guy doing it.
Mingus wrote for tuba also, and Don Butterfield. So it just were, and Barber, what was his first name? Barber, the tuba player, for Gil. I stopped playing tuba in a lot of those groups because, actually in the Mingus band I was playing tuba for a long time, but doubling, I hadn't played in 17 years and I re-picked it up. But I just don't want to carry a tuba around, man. Sitting right up there forever, man. Yeah, it's just too much. Well, even repairmen don't want to do tuba, man. It hits that back.
And for a while you weren't living in the city.
I might buy a plastic tuba.
That's...
When the next generation of plastic tubes, just for a kick, man.
Yeah.
They're like $1,000, $1,500.
Yeah, that's
it's insane.
Oh, I was just I'm getting a new trombone student, and they had been looking about getting a plastic trombone. It's a 9-year-old girl. I mean,
I would recommend it.
Exactly. It's $900 cheaper than
cheapest
student trombone is $1,000.
And if they want to keep playing,
they're gonna have to buy a new one.
Then you get a horn.
Like $150 for a plastic tube or plastic trombone they can play for 4 years. Sure.
What color they getting, man?
Don't know yet. I'm meeting with them tomorrow to talk about it.
Make it a girly. Is it a girl or a boy?
Yeah, it's a girl.
Make it pink. Go look online for the Disney princesses.
Just put the stickers on.
My granddaughters were totally into the Disney. In fact, they just went to Disney World again. My oldest one is 15 and a half, and the young one is 12, and they both still love Disney. Man. I took them down there the first time they went. It was such a kick, man. I loved it. Being with them down there.
Yeah.
But you want to talk about business?
Well, no. I mean, I'm writing down things that we can come back to.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
That's fine.
Okay, good.
So, you go to Juilliard. then like you're playing tenor, your senior high school. You go to
first senior high school, and then the first couple of years at Juilliard. First 3 years at Juilliard.
I mean, like, did you even was that something you had considered previously, like doing a music career? Like why did you go to Juilliard?
I didn't know what else to do. The neighborhood I came from, you'd be my brother was a cab driver, so I'd be a driver of some kind, a truck driver, cab driver, or I'd go for an education degree, and I couldn't see it. I auditioned for Manhattan School of Music and for Juilliard. I got into both. Didn't get a scholarship for either. But there was a teacher at Juilliard that I loved. His name was Davis Schumann.
Which, I mean...
And I was studying with him a little bit before I even went to Juilliard, and I loved him. Just like he lived in Brooklyn, was easy. I had studied with a guy named Jack Elliott. He was an ABC studio guy and orchestral musician, but he was in Queens, and that was a pain in the ass, to get to and my father would have to drive me at that time. I didn't have a license, that kind of thing.
Right.
So.
I mean, Davis Schumann's a guy that, like, I feel like it's weird. Like maybe trombone players now like would recognize the name.
Nah, I'm not even sure.
But
man.
he was really.
He was the forerunner of American solo trombone music.
Yeah, I mean, like there's no Christian Lindbergh without Davis Schumann first.
No, it's not. I mean, everybody's talking about what's his name. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment here. Who's the old trombone player? Did all the flashy stuff. Bluebells of Scotland and all of that.
What, Christian Lindbergh?
No.
What?
No. The old
guy,
Arthur
Pryor.
Arthur Pryor, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows who he is, man. But the Davis Schumann thing, man, that was
like
that was kind of, and he invented the angular trombone, which I played for a couple of years, and he was just a great inspiration. He was really my beloved teacher, man. He's like, and then after he died, Alan Ostrander was my teacher.
He died while you were at Juilliard?
While I was at Juilliard, he died. That was a drag. I used to take him to the hospital. I used to drive him to the hospital and all. And I really loved him, man. He died when he was 54. But he liked me too because I did stuff the hard way, he felt. I never took the easy way out, and he kind of dug that. He told me that once because I walked into somebody else's lesson and tripped over that guy's trombone case, and he looked at the guy and he says... That's why I like him. He does everything the hard way. But he also liked me. The first time I met him, he also liked me because I had no chops, man. But I had a good sound. He said, in your sound, I hear you love the trombone, and it was a very wet breath, and he dug that too. You get a lot of spit. He just comes down. He said from lower. And he really encouraged me to go my own route because he went his own route. You got to study with a guy who has compatible or. You find him to be compatible in your aspirations.
At the very least, is open to that.
At the very least, is open to that. A lot of guys aren't, man.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age, I must say.
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
But yeah, so you mentioned, you're at Juilliard, but doing the trombone doubling thing, it helped you.
Well, I had stopped playing the tuba. Didn't even own a tuba or anything. But when Julia had a fraternity, Phi Mu Alpha, and we were just goofing, all of us, but we a bunch of us became members, trumpet players and brass players, and they elected me the prez of the chapter, and one of the guys was a tuba player, was venturing out into the commercial world, and he said, hey, there's this guy, Alan Raff, who's looking for a sub, and I called him, and I prepared the book really carefully. He Xeroxed the book, which was unusual then, but now it's commonplace. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And I learned how to, and I re-picked up the tuba. Borrowed the tuba, picked up the tuba again, and learned the tuba doubling thing. And it worked. And then I started doing all his subs for everything, tuba or bass trombone, and eventually started just becoming more comfortable in that scene.
And you're like 21.
I was like 21, 22, and I had my own Broadway show by the time I was 24, which is pretty quick now because that's like a coveted gig now.
Well, yeah, it's very coveted. I mean, I think a buddy of mine who works down with Josh Landris. I mean, he got his own show. He got Dr. Zhivago, and it was great. But then it closed after 2 months.
You get used to the bread, and then the bread goes away, and then you got. Right.
But I mean, I remember when I went and saw On the Town, about a year ago, and I was looking at who the trombone players were and who the brass section was, and I was like, oh, okay, I recognize these guys' names. Oh, I know that person. But it's people in their mid to late 30s. I mean, the guy who teaches, guys who teach
40s, 50s.
guys who teach at Stony Brook or SUNY Purchase. I'm like, well, I mean, it does. On one hand, it makes me feel better about being 26 and not being, not necessarily being in that scene. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, how am I ever supposed to get this if they don't get out?
Well, yeah. See, that's the thing. I was lucky. I mean, I was like really the youngest guy around with that. And I had something to offer. I had the tuba thing, and this guy wanted to get out of the show. He needed to have, So.
Right, and
So I lucked into, you say before, I lucked out with changing.
No, you
careers.
said you lucked out.
All right, you said I was conscious, but for me, this wasn't conscious. Just fell into it. I happened to have played the tuba, and then And,
but I mean, it seems to me that might be unusual that you would have been like, oh, well, yeah.
I wanted to make money, man. What are you talking about? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Why I was open to it, you mean?
Well, I mean, not everyone would be.
No, I was playing in the orchestras and stuff, but I recognized right away, man, that I want to do everything, and I wanted to do this as a career. In terms of ideals and credos, I didn't know from ideals and credos. I wanted to play the trombone,
Well, I mean, I'm not, because I feel similar.
I know you're not casting aspersions.
Well, I mean, I feel the same way, but it's not necessary. That's like, that's not a given.
What do you mean it's not a given?
It's not a given that people will do whatever it takes to play their instrument.
I just love blowing into the horn. I just really dug that.
Some people will be like, oh no, I'm not going to do that because that's not what I do.
You'd be surprised how many. There are more than I thought, man.
Right. I mean, and that's kind of the point I'm making. Like, even now in 2016.
When I was in the studio scene, I just fell into that too. I mean, it was whoever loved me the most. That's where I went. Mm-hmm. Wherever people were more open to my personality because I'm a type of guy. I got into a lot of trouble because sometimes I say what's on my mind, and that.
How dare you?
Yeah, right. Well, no, people don't care for that, especially now. Everybody's so cautious, But I'd be hanging out with my buddies that you saw up on the wall there, Alan Rubin and Lou Soloff, and those guys wanted to be studio musicians. Mm-hmm. I had no desire to be a studio. I just wanted to play the trombone. And the studio was paying a lot of dough. And the only time I really realized I wanted to be in the studios was when I had the option to join an orchestra or two. And I opted to say no. This is more fun. I like hanging out with these people. They had a party, and I partied a little bit with them. Very little, only very little. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, only very little.
Well, so, I mean, even though like later, into the '90s, that kind of scene started
going away.
Started going away because, well, for a lot of reasons, but the point is it stopped being.
Well, by that time, I was doing a lot of solo playing.
Right, but I mean, even up until like fairly recently, when some of the big ones would come around, you still get the call. Well, so I mean, I guess what I'm curious about is like what kind of what the differences are.
What do you mean?
Just is it basically the same as
what is what basically?
The studio.
It's much different now. I mean, in the sense that there's not that much. There's very little happening. Mm-hmm. Where I would do 10, 15, 20 recordings a week for 20, 25 years. The guys, I think the busiest guys now of the younger age group, because that stuff is really age related too, because a lot of my guys are gone, mm-hmm. So when your guys are gone, you're kind of gone too. So, but even the guys now who are in the prime of their studio year parameters, they're only doing maybe 3, from what I hear, 3, 4, 2 a week. You can't make a living that way. That's one of the reasons the Broadway shows are so coveted now. I mean, they were always a good gig for guys who wanted to make money, but they're really coveted now because the freelance orchestra thing is down, and the whole bit, man.
I mean, even off-Broadway shows are
I played in one off-Broadway show. I didn't know too much about off-Broadway.
Well, I mean, it's of course it's less money, but even those shows, it's a regular thing for a month and a half maybe, and people want it, and there's always the chance that show will go to Broadway. The buddy of mine.
I never thought in those terms.
Well, I mean,
plan. That I never really planned that way for the future in anything, man.
Well, in some ways, like. I don't know. A buddy of mine is playing on this, and there's an off-Broadway show called Lazarus. It's
Okay.
David
Yeah, of
Bowie
course,
show.
I know,
Sold out the
man.
entire run.
That's fantastic. Yeah, of course,
And
especially now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I mean, at this point, there's at least in my mind, it would seem like there's basically a 0% chance that it won't make the move to Broadway because everyone's like wanting that right now.
Okay.
But but like I look at that, and this guy is the same age as me. He's got this show that's probably gonna
How'd he
move
get it?
on. Got called to do it because he knew a guy.
He knew a guy. That's it's a networking business. Man.
So it's
the networking thing is a fine line too. I mean, you can kiss somebody's butt, but then if you can't do the gig, you're out.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna,
it would be cool to hang out with. But if
whenever a door was open to me, man, I went through it, knowing that as long as I could basically as long as my technique could shine, I'd be cool. And then the style would come.
Did you ever have an issue where you didn't make it through?
No, I get fired a lot. I usually get fired because I'm too rambunctious, because I get involved with doing something while I'm doing that gig, and my mind is on another kind of music, and I just don't. I'll never quit a gig. I'll let myself get fired. Now I pick and choose, so that's a kind of quitting. Like it's interesting. A guy called me to play a solo. Bass trombone piece this just happened yesterday. Guy called me to play a solo concert with strings this spring, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. He said, let me send you the music. And I took a look at the music, and it was an Italian composer, but it was so pedestrian. I said, look, man, I don't want to do that. I'm sorry I passed it, but why don't you do my thing? I sold my piece to him.
And
No, he wasn't too excited, but then I sent him a couple of the New York Times reviews. I pushed it. That for my own music now, and for solo music, I always pushed. Mm-hmm. For jazz gigs, orchestra gigs, commercial gigs, whatever, I never pushed. I just took what came along, But I always felt insecure because I was juggling so many. I like to call myself a genre jumper. I was jumping through so many different genres. I was really insecure basically in every genre until the second, third, or fourth rehearsal, which is an important distinction to make because oftentimes in this scene, the way you play on the first rehearsal is more important than the way you play on the gig.
Well, sometimes there isn't a second or third rehearsal, or yeah,
like with the jingle thing, the jingle business, man, and even the studio business in general, but especially the jingle business. If you were a first call guy, and I was lucky, I was a first call guy. It wasn't even a matter of the clique you belonged to, which I did belong to various cliques. It was a matter of they wouldn't want you around unless you couldn't get them out quick because the business was so busy that you couldn't linger too long on one job. You had to get to the next job.
And if you're the guy making them do two or three extra takes,
it would cost them money,
and you're out.
It would cost your boys money, and they would deal with it for a certain amount of time, but then it was gone. And so the studio business actually policed itself that way. So there was really not as much dead weight as people like to think there was. You know what I mean? Everybody said, well, yeah, he knows this guy, he knows that guy. I'm sure there was some of that going on. But when you were in a group that was going from gig to gig.
Well, and just because so-and-so knows this guy doesn't mean that guy is bad at what he does.
No, that's right. From the other point of view, right.
I mean, yeah, sure. Making, having a connection. But if you're doing the job well, like, what's the problem?
Part of the problem with the cats like who are going to school, and I'm making a weird jump from that word problem, is that they stay in the building, and those who stay in the building will stay in the building. Like with me, I lucked out. My first 2 years at Juilliard, I was low man on the totem pole, tenor trombone wise. So I couldn't get into chamber groups or orchestras even. They kept me out of that. So I just went right to the street. And before I knew it, I was kind of networking without even knowing that I was networking.
By not being allowed into this circle, you were able to kind of jump a couple steps ahead of your colleagues a little bit.
A little bit, nothing.
A lot of bit.
And also it opened me up to understanding that there's more than one kind of music, and that there's no such thing as one music is really higher plane, man. It's like I always based on what's the higher plane by the guys I'm sitting next to. If you're sitting next to great musicians, that's high plane.
Yeah.
I don't care what the genre is, So.
I mean,
and I lucked out that way, man. I learned from like. I was lucky. I always played with guys better than me.
Mm-hmm.
I still do. I'm very lucky that way.
Well, I mean, and you're still out there a bunch of times a week.
Yeah, I'm out there.
Almost every day.
Yeah, I'm out there. And I'm playing with a lot of guys your age.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
and I think, it seems to me that like that's where some of the old guard, if you will, and even some of the old guard are younger than you now.
Dude, like by 20, 30 years.
but like they it seems to me that like a lot of those guys, they only play with people who are in their age bracket, or and it's there's a lack of like crossing
Even in their own cultural bounds.
unless you're the young guy who wins an audition. Those guys aren't going to come down and play with you generally.
Well, I just I'm playing, when I play with cats your age, man, I feel honored, man. They look at me like I'm grandpa, man, but they don't. I'm not sure I think like grandpa. You know what I'm saying? So like it's like that's the bottom line of it. Now we're very lucky being musicians, because if you're in other fields of occupation, man, there are certain age limits, and then you're out, man.
Yeah.
Even orchestral places, man. Right? I mean, like. When you're 65, basically, I mean, like I know in Austria, man, when you're 65, you're out. Period. That's it.
So you're talking about this kind of like this balancing act, this genre hopping you're doing.
Jumping,
genre jumping. You're doing, I mean, so you're doing your big bands.
Somehow jumping sounds more complete to me than hopping. Hopping sounds like it's
sounds like you're just like
skittish. Like,
yeah. Well,
right.
I guess
jumping,
you're right.
man. That's
because you're really
jumping.
You're really
man.
planting your feet.
Yeah, man.
You're taking the risk, and then you're planting your feet on the other side.
Man, exactly. Man.
I mean, I guess like that's something that you've talked about before, is like the idea of like taking the importance of taking risks as a musician. Stretching yourself to do this kind of genre.
Staying out of the
jumping.
comfort zone. I guess that's the cliche, man. Staying out of comfort zone, man. Not worrying about. Although I like making money, I didn't worry as much about the money as some guys worry about the money. I was worried about progressing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I was progressing to, but I was always worried about progressing.
Well, I mean, you mentioned a few minutes ago about feeling a little bit insecure until like the second, third, or fourth rehearsal.
Right. Yeah, I'd be coming from, let's say, playing with some rock and roll group or jazz group. I'm in an orchestra, and I have to switch mindsets. That doesn't happen in a second. You know
right.
what I mean?
And that forces you to
and if it does happen in a second, it means you're not risking enough in each individual area.
I mean, does that force you to that forces you to work harder?
Well, luckily, the technique that I practice is so basic and fundamental and cellular.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just really practice thinking about tone production and articulation. So it's on such a non-stylistic. I don't practice style. So that when I walk into a place, I can assume that style.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm totally. I went through a period. I think I was in my late 40s, early 50s, where I really got the craw up my butt that whenever I always envied guys who could sound stylistically themselves when they sight read, and I had never approached sight reading that way. I approached sight reading as just get the paper
right.
down. I noticed that when I started practicing as if I would be performing, I couldn't sight read as well. And I forced myself to learn how to sight read with a stylistic mentality. Well, how do we get to this? What are we talking
We're talking about genre jumping.
Now, all right.
Yeah.
Now, at this part of my life, whatever I do, that's kind of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's something you've talked to me about, like going and purposely sight reading things that first aren't for your instrument,
right.
and something that that's maybe just a bass line from a piano score or a viola
I used to
line.
practice from piano music.
Right.
I used to practice the left hand on piano music. And Kreutzer violin exercises.
So I mean, you do that, and you begin to add in first time through, play it in your voice. You can
What?
open.
What are you saying?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to connect with what you're saying about sight reading in your own voice and like working on that.
I had to consciously try to do that. I felt, I don't know why I felt I was missing out by not doing that. I felt that if I was me, I should be me always, me, you know, and I couldn't. Man, I used to play in these jazz orchestras, man, where the styles were so heavy, man, you know, and I didn't have that. I was always pretty conscious of wanting to.
I mean, did it actually become an actual problem, you know, for you? Like,
no, guys like having me around because, you know, when you're playing when everybody's playing with so much style, somebody's got to play the B flat in tune. That's the truth, man. So like a lot of the beginning things, they really wanted me around because my technique was solid enough that I could provide a base, you know, where guys can build up from, and my rhythm was very straight ahead, you know, and
so I mean you're.
Now it's all idiosyncratic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, and when I started playing in the real jazz bands, like when I became a member of the Thad Jones Band, I remember we were playing a Bobby Brookmeyer tune, Willow Weep for Me. It's a straight 4/4 ballad, but the band was so much into their own personality that 4/4, you know, metered time takes on a whole different thing when you're playing in a group that's stylistically advanced. And that was my real first understanding of having to progress beyond the generic mentality.
And when was that?
70, 71.
So,
Although I was able to get that in the brass quintet. I was playing in the brass quintet in my Juilliard days. Really great group. Ronnie Rahm and Dave Jolly and all these guys. And I was being it was easier for me to be stylistic in the classical world because I was listening to rock and roll and jazz so much that I applied that to that. It was just harder for me to apply a genuine style in the jazz idiom.
throughout the 70s and into the 80s, I mean, you were playing with, well, like you said, Thad Jones and the Stones and
well, I wasn't a regular member of the Stones. I was just a studio. I was never a regular member, really, except for the Thad Jones gig. I never had a job.
Well, I mean, of course, I mean, that's
I never had a steady gig. Except, I mean, a Broadway show in the '60s, you know, that kind of thing.
But I mean, but that's kind of what I'm trying to illustrate is like, you know, coming in and out, like sticking with this idea of genre jumping. You know, you're doing these, like, playing with so many different acts. You know, that. I
never told anybody what I was doing outside of that genre. I always kept that to myself. If people knew me well enough and they knew I was doing this and this and this and this, but I always kept that. When I was there, I was there, and I didn't talk about anything else.
And why not?
Well, I know, and I'll give you a for instance. I went to a birthday party. I mentioned this to you once, I think, or twice. I went to a birthday party for Emil Charlotte, who was a very big contractor when he was 90 years old. And I was sitting next to, at a table, with a guy around his age, a little younger, who I had worked for. He was a writer of record dates. He did Barry Manilow's first album, and he worked for Arthur Godfrey, who used to be a great personality on the radio and early TV, and he wrote jingles, and he did all these acts. He never knew what I did, and I felt that I didn't want to tell writers what I did because they would become jealous. Oh, you think that music is on a high? I mean, you know, well, I've worked with Alan Hovannes, and you know, what are you doing? I didn't want to get involved with that, and so this guy said to me, you know, Dave, I never knew that you were one of the guys pushing forward modern trombone repertoire, and I didn't know what to say to the guy, so I just said to him, oh, I thought you knew. I didn't tell anybody. And I even recommend that, man. When you're working for a guy, let him know that's what you do. And if he knows you do other stuff, that means he can handle it.
Yeah.
But what was that with De Niro, right? You can't handle the truth.
Jack Nicholson.
But that was Nicholson?
Yeah.
Well, he was a Marine, right?
Yeah.
And he was on trial.
Yeah.
You can't handle the truth.
So I'm not going to give it to you.
No, it wasn't even a matter of that. It was just a matter of I didn't think it was necessary for me to do that.
I mean, did it bite you? Did it ever come around to bite you in the butt?
That people knew what I was doing?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it did.
What?
I can't give you the specific instance. Again,
No, I mean, I you know.
Dude, I was running back and forth doing 10 to 20 recording sessions a week, playing in 2 or 3 heavy-duty jazz groups and every freelance orchestra in New York, man. I can't give you for instances. I mean, it's like, all I can tell you is that I got fired a lot and I got hired a lot, man.
I mean, obviously you didn't get fired enough to make it, to ruin your career.
Well, no, and one of the reasons for that is because whenever I got negative feedback from either an individual or a group, for some reason I just jujitsu'd it. I used that force to make me think another way.
Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about how you're running,
literally, like there were times I would get home when I had a house in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I'd get to my driveway and get a call to go right back to New York to do another jingle or something like that. Jingles were very lucrative back then, much more lucrative even than now. They were very lucrative, man.
Can I get someone to start doing that again?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
can they just bring that back?
Stuff changes, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's all cyclical. Maybe it will come back at some point.
Maybe it will. Maybe it will. The question is to always be ready.
Yeah. So I mean,
the answer is
right. Well, while you're doing all this stuff, I mean, and this is something you've brought up to me a lot of times over the years I've known you, is making sure that you, no matter how busy you are, making sure you're still practicing. And
always, man.
You brought up the fact that made the fact that you always made time to do that, made you able to sustain.
I really believe that's the case.
And, well, how did you even manage that? Did you just not sleep, or?
I'll tell you the truth. Probably no more than 6 hours tops. And literally, the horn was always there, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I'd get through. And my family was very understanding.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, especially, Ronnie, is rock with that. Well, Ronnie.
Well, I mean,
she's like a rock with that. And my children were understanding, and we have a very close relationship. And I'm saying I was the best papa in the world, baby. Let me tell you. But we're very close, and so they were understanding to it. They knew this is what I did, man.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother just called before we had to interrupt the thing. He covered my butt, like when I was off in Russia, playing with the Mingus thing. He went to my son's high school graduation with my, you know what I'm saying, man?
Yeah.
It was like people were helping out. A lot of my family didn't understand why wasn't I around for that wedding or why wasn't I around for this, but they always covered my butt. Now maybe it was because we came from a kind of a low income. Don't forget, we were 3 brothers, slept in the same room, 2 of us shared a bed. We never thought of ourselves as being poor, but we were kind of not smoking, and so maybe they see that I made it up a certain kind of a ladder, and they were happy for me, and they wanted to help me protect that.
It kind of makes me think of when you read stories about old baseball players or any kind of really sports figure, and the neighborhood being happy that one of them made it.
Yeah,
and was doing something.
My family was like that.
We'll take, we'll cover whatever
we'll cover
he needs.
You, baby. Right.
So just keep doing. You got out.
Yeah,
keep
and they
doing
knew
it.
I loved them, and we were always a very close extended family.
I mean, that's an
and I always protected that relationship, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, now.
A lot of you mofos don't do that.
Right. Well, that's kind of the thing. I met a 26-year-old trumpet player a couple weeks ago, and I was, he's not from New York. He came from somewhere else, and he was saying, me and my wife, and I was like, you and your what? What are you talking about? You're 26 years old, and you're a working musician in New York. Why do you have a wife? What are you doing?
Right.
I didn't.
How do you react?
Yeah, I didn't say that to him. Of course, it was just kind of it's a weird thing, and I mean. You.
How do you react to it?
He was just like, it's kind of a different, he's coming from a less citified background, more
right.
more middle America, where it's common,
too many of the cats now, even my guys, man, too many of the guys, when they see the book was all filled in, there was a groove, except one day, man, you realize that you gave up a lot for all of that ink, man.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, you didn't save the bread. Or more often than not, if you did save the bread, you got divorced, or you You know what I'm saying, man?
And yeah,
you give away all the money, man. It's like, you know.
Like, this is another situation where you're kind of a unique case where how old were you when you got married? Like
23, 24, 23.
You had a couple
we
kids
had a kid
really
when I was
early.
24, 25. I was at 24 and a half, 25, right?
But you're still married to the same person.
Well, we had a rough time, man. I got to tell you, man. It
I'm
was
sure.
like I had to fight past her parents. Her parents wanted a doctor for their daughter. they didn't care for it. They couldn't understand. I mean, you know, the family members, when I first started becoming busy in the jingle thing, their family would try to explain to her parents, hey, the guy's doing jingles, you know. It's like, come on, you know, give me. But they still couldn't, because they had the concept of musicians, you know, we're wild characters, which I kind of was. From where I came from, I became a pretty wild character for a while. Always took care of business though. Always showed. Who are we talking to? I was talking to Tony Cadlick, a very busy youngish trumpet player now. He's about 50, but he's on everything, man. He does everything. And we were doing a gig together in the morning, and one of the cats was late. And we were looking at each other, because he and I are probably the busiest cats, and we were there half hour before everybody else was there, man, warming up.
Right.
You know? And we were commiserating upon how people don't realize that even if you're going to sound like crap or you're drunk, whatever the hell you are, showing up on time is 80% of the gig, man. It really is, you know. So I always had a sense of responsibility. How do we get to that? What we talking about?
Family. We're talking about family and
right. And I always had my allegiance to my family, man. You know.
And now it's the kind of situation where anyone who spends any amount of time with you, you know, knows your wife, knows your family in some way, and just is like, it's kind of.
That's what it is, man.
You know, even like among our, you know, trombonists that are my age, some of the younger guys who play with you or collaborate, you thought Ronnie's a little bit of a legend.
Oh, really? Well, I know. Back in the day, they used to call her the Saint because
you were the sinner.
I was so out, man, that she gave me cred, man. She gave me cred, you know. But literally, she was known as the Saint. You know, and, in fact, employers, when I would go on tour, you know, usually they don't like when spouse would come along. They were very happy whenever I brought Ronnie with me, because she kept me cool. You know, she's a fantastic, and her artwork now is. Yeah. We went to have a picture of hers framed yesterday, right? And there was somebody who wanted to buy the picture.
Well, yeah,
while we were there.
But when I showed up and she was showing me the one she just finished.
Yeah, well, the one before that one, we went to get framed. And we give it to my daughter, man. They offered us money right there for the thing. So.
Oh, okay.
And she's doing album covers, you know.
So
it's really great. And we go on trips now. I mean, the first 15, 18 years was rough because we had kids right away. The romance, we were so young and under so much pressure because I didn't have a career at that time, that the romance, even though we were, how do I say this, totally engaging in physical activity, the romance somehow was kind of, you know, we had kids, man. Kids, you know,
kind of pushes it off to the side.
Yeah, because our kids know how to play you against each other. You know, kids are smart, man. So it was rough. but then by the end of the second decade, we really got a handle on the thing. Why did we stay together? Because she was so beautiful, man, and she would, and throughout all the understanding, she knew how I felt about music, you know. And we had a mutual respect, man. You know,
I think a lot of musicians.
We go to marriage counselors on it when we need it.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, I think that musicians underestimate the importance of having
I agree.
People that support you and that you can support, because it's also important for it to go the other way. I mean,
well, it's also reality. I mean, if you want to come up with a style, you have to kind of deal with all aspects. But you don't have to deal with all aspects, but one should be aware that there are many other aspects that go into a personal style of music that are just from real life experience.
Yeah.
Like when a guy has to walk out in the street and improvise, where's my next meal coming from? Or improvise, what am I going to do here? Or improvise, I got to get to work and I got to get home from work. That improvisation goes into your improvisation.
Yeah, I mean, the life experience goes into the music.
Yeah. I mean, like even those great orchestral players like Bud Herseth and Arnold Jacobs, those guys, they were circus players. you know, and they had an understanding of musical concept that oftentimes a guy goes right from a conservatory into an orchestra, man. The hell does he know?
Or even, I mean, it's become. I mean, we can talk about this later.
All right,
but yeah, I mean,
I'll follow your lead.
I'll come
You
back.
go.
I'm going to come back to
All
that.
right. Okay.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
So, you know, you spend like 10, 15, 20 years doing primarily, you know, studio, some chamber stuff.
There was never primarily in my career.
Primarily everything.
Primarily everything. Really,
you know,
it's true, man.
But like in, you know, and this is kind of a lot of trombonists who are, you know, familiar with you and your career. You know, they, you know, you know, you kind of shifted in the mid '80s into doing a lot more solo work. You know, and that's
right.
And you
83 was my first recital. 83, 84 when I was 40. But
right, you know, that's you know.
But I was doing solo pieces. But but that really.
Right, there's you know, you have records with some earlier stuff on it. You know, Erica Wazen in the, you know,
late 70s.
Yeah, like right. So some of, you know, some early pre-tonal Eric Wazen.
Yeah, right. He's so
he's
very
funny.
proud of that piece now.
Well, he should be. I mean, when you go back and listen, you know, we're talking about this piece Dagon 2.
Right.
Dagon was a Philistine god.
Right. Of agriculture.
Referenced a lot of times in the Bible, interestingly enough.
Not being a big Bible aficionado, I don't know that. Yeah.
A lot of stuff in the Old Testament about Dagon.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But yeah, like you go back and listen to that after hearing, you know, a couple decades of pieces that a lot of brass players perform. You're like, what was he doing in 1980? And it's very, very different.
It was very different. You know, that came around too because I went to Julia. We met, and he played me a whole reel of his stuff. Mm-hmm. I approached it like, all right.
And he was just right out of school?
He might have been like a fellow at that time. He went to Eastman. Right. We're good friends now.
Yeah.
We go out with our ladies.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, we go out like with our ladies and we socialize. And I introduced him to Daniel Schnieder. We hung out. Yeah, another great trombone brass writer.
And that one that you still collaborate with
yes,
on a regular basis.
Yeah, on a regular basis. And we sat in a room, and he played me demos of all his pieces. Mm-hmm. And this Dagon piece was something he had written a similar thing for 8 celli. Mm-hmm. I said, "Whoa, what was that?" Well, that was, you know. I said, "No, I want that." And so that's what we went through that style. And he listened to all my mute sounds, and that's how we came up with that. You know? Yeah.
So you'd done some before, but like this, you know, if you look at what you've done that like that 1984, that big, you know, the Carnegie Hall, the whole situation, it kind of functions almost as a turning point in your career. In some ways.
No, it was.
You know,
it was.
You're still doing, you know, after that, you're still doing all of the other stuff you were doing previously.
For sure.
But now, like, you've become, you know, and it has continued. You become like someone who's commissioned hundreds of works for trombone.
I hate to say it, but maybe more than hundreds. I hate this.
Well, why would you hate to say that? Like,
well, because I don't know the numbers, but the numbers stagger me, man.
Well, I mean, we're sitting in your studio next to literally racks and racks of music that's you know, written for you, performed by you,
right?
You know, and you know, I don't know, right away you kind of became a guy who was known for pushing the boundaries of what people.
Which incidentally, going back to the last 15 minutes, when I started doing the recitals and stuff, it did cross my mind, well, now people are going to know what I do. And I was worried that would affect my studio business and stuff like that.
But at that
I went straight ahead.
You know,
there's no such thing as at that point, man. I don't even feel like I'm at that point now, man. It's like,
no. What I'm saying is like, fine. But you built enough of a reputation, you know, that like, why would that affect, you know, your other work?
Reputation's schmeputation, man. That stuff goes away, baby.
But did it?
I don't think it did. No,
yeah,
no, I don't think it did. But that, I think that was because I maintained an even more fastidious mentality at that point. I mean, it's like, you know, it's funny, man. When you work for somebody and you're successful, it's not like you're not expendable. we're always expendable, man. We're a dime a dozen. A million guys could do what we're, not a million, many guys can do what we're doing. And when you work for a guy over and over again, it's not that it's like you both have a dependency. And you almost have to be nicer.
Well, I mean, he doesn't.
So no, I was more fastidious after that.
I would imagine that, like, if someone, well, and this goes back to what you're saying about not telling anyone what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, if they see you doing all this other stuff, they're gonna like, oh, well, he's not giving me enough attention.
That could be a very yeah, man.
It's like he's the pretty girl, and he thinks you got a new pretty girl.
Yeah, right, man. That's right, man. I mean, but that was always my thinking.
But was this something you had always wanted to do but never really gotten into?
What are you talking about?
The solo stuff.
When somebody once asked somebody who knows me pretty well, a very intelligent guy, in fact, an intellect, and they said, "Do I pre-think these things?" And they laughed. No, Taylor's an animal. He goes by the gut at the moment, and that's what. Yeah, I really do. I kind of go by the. Yeah, I plan. I mean.
Well, you can't just book a hall and do a recital without planning it.
Yeah, right.
But you never did a recital
until I was 40
in college.
Like because when Davis died, everybody didn't know what the hell to do with me, man. It's like
I mean, this is like
I scooted through. Yeah, that was my first.
But this is you're 40 years old. This is your very first one.
And I lost the St. Luke's Chamber Orchestra gig over that because I was in such bad chop shape. And so concerned about my program that I just kind of split from that and really sacrificed that whole thing for this one recital. In fact, I almost sacrificed I was a member of this band that was going on tour to Europe at that, but this is what I wanted to do at the moment. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I do things stupidly sometimes, man. It's like...
but I mean,
I made stupid decisions.
Turns out it was worth the risk.
It was worth the risk because it gave me a long ball approach. Helped give me a long ball approach. Yeah.
And it
and it was so hard for me. I almost gave up that whole thing, but I had another hall booked. I had Merkin Concert Hall booked. I did a Carnegie recital. That was my first one, and it was such a personal disaster that I almost canceled out. But on doing it ever again in the future. But I had already booked Merkin Hall for the following spring. I said, well, look, I got it invested in it. I might as well try it again. And that was very successful. It was really heart-wrenching, that first recital.
I mean, so on that show you did transcriptions and
I did all transcriptions, and transcriptions. I don't remember the program per se, but I know I did a lot of Bach, did a lot of Rimsky-Korsakov. I did a lot of, but all kinds of chamber music.
But not the Rimsky-Korsakov trombone concerto.
No, piano pieces, or I did all kinds of. I threw the whole kitchen sink in,
and overdid it.
Totally overdid it. And I remember I threw a big party at the Park and Meridian Hotel, and I got so trashed. I trashed the room, and it was. I was nice when the people were there. It was when the people all left, I went off, man. And it's like. But I kept going, man.
Yeah, but you already got the other hall booked.
I already had the other hall booked.
You already spent the money.
And not only that, but I already saw what I shouldn't do.
Right.
So I culled a little bit.
Did you do? Was it basically this like a similar program?
A very similar program.
Just not quite as
much. I had a new thing or two on it, but I was doing a lot of Buxtehude arrangements then. I was doing all kinds of. Buxtehude is great. Oh.
But so, you've brought up the fact that you were lucky in the way you
totally.
shifted from
I
here.
I really believe in the luck, man.
So when these other jobs started to dry up, you had already been established. You'd already established
yourself. What other jobs dried up?
Like the start of the studio stuff and.
When the studio stuff dried up, I was already sold. I was already gone, man.
At that point, you've already commissioned dozens and dozens of works.
I was gone. Yeah, I was gone. It was no sweat off my. In fact, it was better because I'd been doing the studio thing so long that it was my whole head was going downhill towards the thing, man. It was like I had to get out, man.
I guess you. Yeah.
It was just it became like when something is overdone, man. Fruit rotting or vegetable, oxidizing, not rotting.
Yeah.
When you see an apple and it starts turning colors because it's oxidizing, Yeah, that was kind of a.
So when you...
I wasn't financially secure then, but I did it anyway. I was more financially secure than I was kind of close to becoming financially secure. Yeah.
So in those earlier times of commissioning, mostly commissioning. I mean, now you're writing a lot of your own stuff.
Now I want to only play my own stuff.
But I mean,
unless the other stuff pays well.
You mercenary.
Right, I am.
But I mean, what were you looking for in
the solo
new
stuff?
pieces? I mean, because you premiered.
Well, I don't want to be I don't want to be seem too mercenary to you, but part of the element of why I started commissioning music was because I wanted to develop a style. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a chord changes improviser. So the area of music that I was most compatible with was the modern classical repertoire.
And then you played with Boulez.
Yeah, I've been playing with Boulez even before he became, I can't remember, before he became the Philharmonic conductor. We used to do these concerts down at Cooper Union, these chamber music.
Boulez before he became Boulez.
Boulez.
In quotes.
Right. He was on his way to being Boulez, but and then so when he became the conductor there, I was subbing there all the time, and my teacher got sick, so I was playing there for a long period of time. And we had a nice relationship. We would talk to each other and stuff and joke even,
But I mean,
I had that with Berrio too. I used to joke around because I took a class with Berrio for a year at Juilliard. He taught for a year at Juilliard. It was I looked into these.
Yeah. So
I took my friend's advice. I didn't know who Berrio was. Oh, Berrio. Okay, Berrio. Yeah, right.
But so when you're looking for, you say that you fit quote unquote in best into this new music. I mean, you'd been doing that for.
Okay, so I had no understanding of how to come upon a style, but I knew all this music. I knew that this was the music I loved doing, and it was through composed. But the mercenary aspect of it was because I was working in the recording business, and most of the guys who were really busy in the recording business were also being written up in newspapers. Mm-hmm. And I had to figure out a way to get into the newspapers. So, and I knew who the right composers were, the hot composers, and they were also the more intellectual of the guys who maybe would help me learn more about music. Mm-hmm. It was all there was like a gestalt to it. So I started getting reviewed in the newspapers, so composers started seeing me as being taking my commission seriously, so they started asking me if they could write for me, stuff like that, so it just perpetuated, I learned how to stand up in front of people. Yeah.
Was that an issue before?
I think the issue is, what do you do when you screw up while you're playing in front of people?
Obviously you just break down and start crying.
Right. and so what you learn how to do is you learn how to improvise right through it, or you learn how to develop. You learn. That's when you learn your split second decisions, man.
And those split second decisions is something that it seems to be like something you take that are very important to the things that you play soloistically.
Yeah. I like to improvise through written music, right?
I remember the first couple times you were like really hammering me when we would work on, when I would be working on things that were just like Bach, and not having coming from a place where you don't necessarily have that ability. It's a very difficult thing it takes a lot of work to. Was it the work
of that you were afraid to because of other people's opinions?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot that you're playing. If you're playing a piece that a lot of people know, and you want if you're playing on an instrument that it's not written for, and it's hard. It's really easy to slip into just playing it in a way that people will recognize as correct for that piece. And
that never really was an issue for me.
Well, I mean, like a lot of those pieces are pieces that you were the first person to play them.
Yeah, that's true too. But I mean, the correctness of look at man. Even when I played in an orchestra, like let's say Juilliard, when I was at Juilliard, I mean, I was always joking around and having a good time with it. So people didn't assume that I was a serious orchestral mentality. And even when I would be playing my solos, I always somehow had, I mean, in orchestra, some kind of a jazzy. No, I hate to use that word. I had a lively bent to my rhythms. I remember the first time I really played an orchestral solo, it was the Miraculous Mandarin. That starts, for those who you know, that starts off with a bass trombone going ba-ra-ba, ba-ra-ba-ba, ba-ra-ba-ba-ba-ba. It's just a big intro to this whole piece. And I smoked it, and cats went really dug it. This is when I was in Juilliard. And I'll never forget, man, I had a Volkswagen 67 Beetle at that time. I was tooling down the West Side Highway just in heaven. That was really my first real say, oh, wow, I could do this.
Yeah.
When I did that. And it was always jaunty. My stuff was... So I never was really worried about the political correctness with interpretation.
So, as you know...
In fact, I went to transcription because I didn't like the attitude towards audition solo pieces. I didn't like that whole... I recognized that right away, that I didn't care for that aspect of academia, man.